Hello there, Mad Mike here, and welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to be discussing some news that has come out about the new Robocop film that is in development, and that movie is supposed to be following up the original Robocop films, which came out in the late '80s and early '90s. Now, uh, for those of you who are not familiar with what the RoboCop franchise has been doing over the past few years. Uh, After the original three films, there was a long hiatus, and then they decided to try and reboot it with RoboCop 2014, which starred Joel Kinnaman. That movie was a terrible, horrible mess. And really, the only shining point of it was that Michael Keaton was the bad guy. They had a few little nods to the original RoboCop, but ultimately, I think it's a far lesser film than the original RoboCop. It digs a lot less into real human issues as opposed to the original. So then, after that movie essentially failed, they decided they wanted to move into revitalizing the old franchise, and they have now greenlit a film that is going to be called RoboCop Returns, or at least that is the current title of it. That'll probably change in the future. But it is going to be directed by Neil Blomkamp, who most people know from District 9 and Elysium and Chappie and all those films. And we got news today that a couple of things. The script is in the process of being written. Apparently, it is a draft that was originally going to be used for RoboCop 2, but it was scrapped. So they took that draft and they're now in the process of rewriting it. And then the other thing is that they have confirmed that they're going to be bringing back the original RoboCop suit from the original three films, as opposed to making a new suit or doing what they did in the reboot, which is basically just make the suit like black and Kevlar and stuff. Um, Now, this 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 film project has me concerned from a few different perspectives. First of all, the fact that this is another '80s franchise that is getting dredged up and put back out there again now after the failed reboot is concerning. This could be another situation like I think might happen with Ghostbusters 2020. Is the 2014 version, although it was a piece of shit, I don't think it had as much of a visceral reaction as Ghostbusters 2016, but it still wasn't that good. That could have soured the waters. People might be confused if this is a sequel to that film or a sequel to other films. General moviegoers that don't essentially follow the news. When a trailer comes out for this, I think they'll probably try to make that as evident as possible. But the other problem that they run into is with the director Neil Blomkamp. Now, I like some of Blomkamp's films. I like District 9 and I like Elysium. Chappie is, and I really would have actually liked to seen him do a Halo movie. I think that would have been very interesting. But the problem that I have with Blomkamp, and the fact that he's writing the script is also why I have a problem with this, is he's very heavy-handed when it comes to his messages. Elysium is very clearly, it has class messages. You have the lower class, which live on Earth, and the upper class that have everything, and they live on this orbiting space station. It's a very clear allegory. District 9, very clear allegory for South African racism. And Chappie was just kind of a weird movie. But when he tries to do messages, he does them very, very blatantly. The original RoboCop was very tongue in cheek when it came to its message. And when I say that, it was one of those films that it was a deep it was a deeper message than what you were seeing on screen necessarily. It's one of those films that excelled very much at it gave you something as far as an action spectacle that was very entertaining, but at the same time it was speaking to actual and real themes that were very close to home. What is humanity? We look at this man trying to rediscover his humanity after everything that's happened to him and not knowing his past and not knowing what's going on, and coming to terms with the idea that his family believes that he's dead and all this other stuff. There was a lot of deeper messages in the original RoboCop, not necessarily in the sequels, but in the original itself. And they had all that tongue-in-cheek kind of advertising and stuff like that. They had that television show that would premiere every time called I forget, it's something involving a dollar. It was I'd buy that for a dollar. The guy that was on the television the whole time. It was kind of these funny little gags, but it was really a message to certain things. There was some message to corporations and consumerism because of the OCP organization that wound up building Robocop and all their stuff. They have a thing about renting or payments for like a replacement heart and stuff like that. The original film was very tongue in cheek. I think that's why it has lasted as long as it has, is because the messages aren't necessarily confined to the 80s. They're universal in a certain way. The action and the tone of the film is very much in line with an 80s film. But the overall message can transcend beyond that, beyond the time that it was made. Now, if you're trying to do a sequel to that, the other question that I have is, are you going to disregard uh, Robocop 3, which is considered the shittiest of the Robocop movies, and also the only one, other than the reboot, to not feature Peter Weller as Robocop? Um, so that's kind of concerning, depending on what timeline you're going to go around playing in. Because, to be fair, a lot of people have seen the first two RoboCops. Not a lot of people saw the third one because it kind of sucked. So if you're going to do a sequel to that, if you're going to do a sequel to those films, you might just want to just totally screw over the third film and just start after two, which I think might be what's happening here, given where the script came from. But going forward from that, the other problem that you have is, I'm curious about the casting. And actually, I shouldn't say this is a problem, but I'm curious about the casting, because if you want to get Peter, I would try to get Peter Weller back. I would 100% try to get him back, because today you can literally put anybody in that suit, and then you could use CGI, you can use a deep fake or something to make his, to match the words to Peter Weller's mouth. You can do stuff like that, which you couldn't do back then. And again, this depends a large part on the budget, which I don't necessarily know what the budget for this film is. But you could do that stuff. When he takes off the helmet, you can do a CGI face and make it work. For short bits. But I would really like to see Peter Weller come back, and I know a large reason why he didn't come back for the third one was because of the uncomfortable nature of the suit itself. And with the increases in technology and stuff like that, I'm sure the suit isn't going to be as constraining and bad as it was back then. I think there was rumors that he lost 20 pounds worth of sweat over a day of shooting. They actually had to install an air conditioning unit inside the suit so that he wouldn't dehydrate and die. But this is a very interesting film project going forward. Now, and again, I have my concerns. I'm not necessarily optimistic at this point, knowing who's involved in it. But I'm going to reserve my judgment until I at least see a first trailer for this film. But I'd like to know what you think. Is anybody out there a fan of the original RoboCop? Or any of the originals? Would you like to see a continuation of that timeline? Are you okay leaving it off at three? I'd like to know your thoughts in the comments. Make sure to hit the bell for notifications, hit the like button, subscribe, and remember, I live my life free of compromise. Do you?